Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett. I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on the John Campea YouTube channel. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it? Especially if you love the movies.
Observations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
I've heard it said before, like, it was a very smart man named Robert Meyer Burnett who said the currency of our current age is authenticity. And it's so true.
Imagination Connoisseurs Unlimited, in association with Road to Perdition writer Max Allan Collins, brings you the full-blown audio drama True Noir, the Nathan Heller Case books, the story of Private Eye to the Stars Nathan Heller and his rise from the Chicago PD to one of the most influential private eyes in American history. Coming soon. I can't even do this. You guys know it's coming. Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination, and the perhaps never to be defined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I'm Robcasting you from the Robservatory. You imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations episode number 937. So today is the 1-year anniversary of the release of Star Trek Picard. Amazing. As one of the early champions of the show, I don't regret a moment of it. I'm so happy I was able to get out in front of that bandwagon and tub thump for the show. Still proud of it. I just dropped a video on the channel, part of the fully articulated series of unboxings, which now number 3. And this, of course, was an unboxing for Vice Press's beautiful print of the poster art for the last episode, The Last Generation. You can still get it on their website at vice-press.com. And check it out. By the way, they don't pay me. I just like their stuff. So I'm happy to promote anybody's stuff that I like. By the way, I read a book that just came out that I'm going to talk about. I got to get the author on the show. I've talked to him before. It's also very, very good. It's a science fiction novel that we'll talk about shortly because I'm not quite sure how to pronounce the word. But we'll talk about that. And I'm going to get the author to be on the show. I can't believe it. I keep leaving this bottle of cleaning product that I've been dusting my shelves with in view of you people. What does that say about me? I don't know. Anyway, so as many of you might guess, I think about movies a lot, but I also think about the business of Hollywood a lot. And one of the genres of film that I grew up loving, and this might surprise some of you, is the romantic comedy. I consider myself a hopeless romantic to a certain extent, but I've always loved the romantic comedy and sometimes just romance in general. I love romantic films. One of my favorite movies of all time, as in Rob Burnett's top 10, is Amélie, Jean-Pierre Genet's Amélie. And it's interesting because they're doing a restoration of Amélie, and Genet, would I like to get Amélie in 4K? Yes, but it was digitally created, and so it will never exist in 4K except as an upscale, but Genet doesn't want to do that. He's been restoring the film. It's only going to exist in 2K, but I can't wait to get the restoration. But in terms of the worldview that Amélie espouses, I'm all for that. the wonder of everyday life. There's magic all around us, and romance can find you wherever you are. So I've always been a romantic. I think my love of Star Trek has a certain romanticism that goes through it all. But some of my favorite movies, I mean, obviously I love Woody Allen films and movies like Annie Hall and Manhattan. I love Stardust Memories. Crimes and Misdemeanors is not a romance, but it's kind of an anti-romance, but I love that film too. But I'm a big Woody Allen fan, but I love romantic comedies. And Tootsie is a great romantic comedy, even though the romance is kind of adjunct to the main story. But I've always loved because courtship rituals and the relationship that people have with one another is what makes life worth living. And it's always been, those relationships have always fascinated me. So that's why I've always been a fan of romantic comedies, and also some of the interplay between men and women, the differences between men and women, and the comedic situations they lead to are always fun. And, growing up, the John Hughes movies, Pretty in Pink and Some Kind of Wonderful, which are sort of two sides of the same coin, those are romantic comedies. And even though they're teen romantic comedies, I mean, and I like teen romantic comedies. And lately, 10 years ago, Will Gluck's films like Easy A or Friends with Benefits, really like those. I love Friends with Benefits. I love Forgetting Sarah Marshall. One of my favorite movies of all time is When Harry Met Sally, which is hilarious. And is there something wrong with my face? It's so good. And I've loved those things, but romantic comedies have kind of gone away, and I have found it interesting, but it does not surprise me, because we live in a profoundly unromantic time. Snark is the enemy of romance, unless, we're talking about rapier wit or something like that, but we're not. People are snarky, and it's very hard. Young girls would rather have an OnlyFans, and commodify romance, commodify sex. Teens are having less sex than they've ever had before. I would think that being a teenager is profoundly unromantic. I had a very romantic junior high and high school career. Trust me, it was full of great romance. It was a lot of great stuff, starting when I was 13. But it was all good. And I find the de-romanticization of our society not just a little disconcerting, because romantic notions, and I don't just mean romantic notions about falling in love. I'm talking about a romanticism for life. Falling in love is, of course, one of the driving forces of that. But to be romantic is not just to be romantic about somebody you're in love with, but to be romantic is also about life in general. There's to believe in love is to carry that over. Star Trek is a very romantic show. The romantic notion of going out and conquering the final frontier and all of those things. There is a romance and a zest to life that I would like to say that I think that for whatever reason, I kind of grew up with it. My household that I grew up in was not particularly a romantic one, but for whatever reason, I was drawn to the idea of romanticism in all of its myriad forms. So it has surprised me that the romantic comedy went away as a genre. It's funny too, because I think about Friends with Benefits, and in my mind, Friends with Benefits came out like a couple of years ago. That isn't true. Easy A, which is a great high school movie that Emma Stone was in. Love that. I love La La Land. That's a romance. That was kind of an outlier, but to me, romantic comedies were the bread and butter of Hollywood for decades. And a good romantic comedy, a witty repartee between two people, I find that irresistible. Singing in the Rain, a great musical, but also a great romance. Hitchcock movies, Never Say Never, or Never Say Never Again. North by Northwest, Never Say Never Again did have Fatima Blush. Write that the greatest rapture in your life was had on a boat in Nassau with Fatima Blush. Well, agents can't give out endorsements. That was not exactly a romantic film, but still. Even Casino Royale is a Bond film. Or, of course, On Her Majesty's Secret Service has a big romantic component to it. But romance, the romantic genre. What happened, man? I mean, I understand you'd think we'd live in the most romantic nation in the world with all the Swifties running around. Taylor Swift only writing stories about breakups. But the thing about Taylor Swift is, while her romances are great as we see them played out across football fields across the nation, I get the feeling that her followers would rather read about or hear about her breakups. I mean, they might love her with Travis Kelce, but he's just another notch in their quest to get another good breakup song. You know, because, I mean, Taylor Swift is nothing but a wordsmith that can craft in 4 minutes a great story about unrequited love and breakups and all of those things, which I understand. But it seems to me the breaking up and the emotional turmoil is better than the romantic notions of being involved. And maybe that part of the death of the erotic thriller. You know, everybody just goes to the explicit porn instead of the eroticism of two people connecting, barely touching, exploring one another's bodies, finding out what buttons to push. All of that seems to have been missing from our civilization, and maybe that's part of the problem with where we're at now. Everybody's so mean and frustrated and angry and willing to, I mean, there's no respect for anybody anymore. No respect for what you've done, what you've accomplished, no respect for who you are. Profoundly disturbing. But anyway, let's bring that to a movie that has quietly, after a slow start, burned up the box office charts and is actually a pretty good movie, and it's a romantic comedy. And first of all, there's a really interesting, I put a link to the article if you want to follow along in the description. You can check that out. But I also added this chart that's from the article. Is romance at the box office dead? Total romantic comedies and romance genre films released annually in domestic theaters since 2005. I mean, I would assume these are studio movies, but look at this. Look at this. I mean, this is a it shows where, of course, Iron Man and The Dark Knight came out in theaters, but this is a pretty shocking decline in a genre that Hollywood was partially built upon, and it's almost gone away entirely, which is rather shocking. Rather shocking. But there is a movie at the box office starring, again, I think one of the things about, let me make this point. One of the things about romantic comedies is they're only as good as the people in them. And I would say we've kind of lost, I mean, Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan could always be, whether it was Sleepless in Seattle or, you know, anything else, they were a great couple. And it was fun to watch them. But who do we have that can be romantic anymore? You know, you want to see, I mean, Ryan Reynolds, actually, funny thing, he's a romantic guy. Obviously, he loves his wife, but he could also do romance and in the past. And he was also great as a comedian when he was in college, you know, in those kinds of movies as well. But who do we have that can be a romantic lead that's credible? And I think one of the interesting things is a man at the center of this romance, this romantic comedy that's going up the charts, is, of course, Glenn Powell, who was irresistibly magnetic in Top Gun Maverick. Handsome dude, has a winning personality. You can believe that guy could slay the ladies. I mean, he got a lot of play. And he knew what was up. He knew what he was doing. And you believe him as a romantic lead. And interesting thing about Glenn Powell, he was also in Devotion. He's been in a lot of other things. But he's also in an upcoming movie, Richard Linklater. You know, we're talking Dazed and Confused. We're talking Boyhood. We're talking School of Rock, Richard Linklater. They co-wrote a movie called Hitman that was burning up the festival circuit that's unfortunately only going to streaming. You'd think with Glenn Powell's charisma and the fact that he's becoming a very bankable star in multiple genres of film that maybe Hitman would go to theaters, but apparently that doesn't look to be the case, which is too bad because by all accounts, Hitman is a great movie. But so Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney, and of course Sydney Sweeney, people remember her from, of course, Euphoria. How could you not? And she's quite the dish. And they're starring together in the movie Anyone But You, which started out its first weekend only $6 million, but it's hung in there because, hey, it benefited from the fact not a lot of other things came out. And now we live in a world where Madam Web exists. So this movie, believe it or not, has gone on to gross more than $170 million at the global box office. A movie that people thought started out slow and disappointingly in terms of how much money it made. It was only $6 million. But the question remains. Sarah Whitten asks a question in CNBC. And let's read this together. Anyone but you could spark a rom-com renaissance in Hollywood. To be honest, I hope so. I think one of the great things that we need in our culture right now is romanticism. I think part of the reason everyone's at each other's throats all the time, Republicans and Democrats and boys and girls and whomever, we're all at each other's throats. There's a profound lack of respect in our civilization for other human beings. We are losing a sense of romanticism. And I think that we need that. We need that. Everyone's becoming too disaffected and jaded, and it's boring and tiresome. Just the very fact that our lives are so finite, and in terms of on a cosmic scale, we're not even here for the blink of an eye. Our lives alone, the uniqueness of every person on this earth, should give everyone a streak of romanticism that we even exist at all. That's what I say. That's part of my worldview. So, key points of this article. Sony's Anyone But You was a slow burn at the box office, generating just $6 million during its opening weekend in December. In the 7 weeks since, the romantic comedy has tallied $170 million globally, including $80 million from domestic theaters. Romantic comedies fell out of favor with Hollywood studios looking to chase big box office returns. More on this later. From superhero-based blockbusters. Anyone But You proves romantic comedies still have a place in the theatrical space, and audiences will turn up for them. Well, it's hard not to turn up for a movie when they star people who look like these two. Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney are very easy on the eyes, and they had that push-pull frisson between them that we always want from our romantic leads. Will they, won't they? And then, of course, we know they do, but we give it the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they won't, for a while at least. But here I'm going to read this article. And again, it is by Sarah Whitten, and she's at Sarah Witt 10 on Twitter. Released just before the crowded Christmas movie season, Sony's Anyone But You seemed destined to be anything but a box office hit, especially after it tallied just $6 million in ticket sales during its opening weekend. However, the film's box office success was as much of a slow burn as the romance between its main characters, played by rising stars Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney. In the 7 weeks since, the romantic comedy has tallied $170 million globally, including $80 million from domestic theaters, according to data from ComScore. The film had a reported budget, now this is very important, of just $25 million. A sleeper hit at the box office, the film is a healthy sign for romantic comedy, the romantic comedy genre, and other mid-budget Hollywood flicks, said Scott Meslow, author of From Hollywood with Love, The Rise and Fall and Rise Again of the Romantic Comedy. But it remains to be seen if other rom-coms can repeat its success. Also, I would say, just like many other movies, romantic comedies are truly a reflection of the era in which they are made. So we'll see in our profoundly unromantic world that we live in now, does anyone have a romantic bone in their body enough to make a good romantic comedy? Will Gluck is one of those people and has for the better part, more than maybe a decade and a half now. As studios chased big-budget superhero flicks after the success of Marvel's interconnected cinematic universe, Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy and DC Studios' Man of Steel, the rom-com found itself on the cutting room floor, and then as padding for streaming services. Interestingly enough, isn't it interesting that Todd Phillips, director of Joker, is leaning into, it might be psychotic, but a romance for Joker, Folie et Deux. Isn't that interesting? I, for one, want to see what's going on. I mean, I get so much, people are like, I posted a picture yesterday, and people are like, I don't watch musicals. Musicals take me out of it. No verisimilitude. And I'm just like, you unromantic people. How do you not like musicals? I mean, I can understand the verisimilitude of which musicals sort of lack, but I mean, West Side Story, which is Romeo and Juliet, after all, one of the great musicals of all time, both the original and Spielberg's remake or reimagining. West Side Story is one of my favorite movies. I guess you have to see it in 70 millimeter in a big theater. But, anyway. Now, I showed you guys this graph. Between 2004 and 2010, Hollywood consistently released 15 and 25 romantic comedies or romance films each year. But from 2011 through last year, there were less than 15 new rom-coms or romance releases per year, with most years falling below 10. Meslow said there was no rom-com kill shot, a film or series of films that sparked the decline of the theatrical release of the genre. Instead, it came after media companies changed their priorities. Studios are, at the end of the day, businesses, Will Gluck says, the writer-director of Anything But You and the filmmaker behind Easy A and Friends with Benefits, told CNBC. So if they start to see a certain thing is successful, they're going to try and replicate that success. So I don't think there's an inherent bias against rom-coms and comedies. Well, I would say there is today because no one's romantic. Studios saw action or superhero movies with $200 million budgets and billions in box office returns as a priority over small budget films, which may have been profitable, but less so in comparison. And now as superheroes fall out of favor and Wall Street wants to see profitability from direct-to-consumer streaming platforms, the romantic comedy genre is poised for a comeback. Isn't it so strange that everything going on in the entertainment industry is now driven by what Wall Street wants? One of the most unromantic places in the world, unless you get really rich and you can find romance on any street corner. Gluck's Anyone But You proves audiences will still turn up for romantic comedies in theaters, if they're good. The film's performance builds on the success of two rom-coms from 2022. Paramount's The Lost City generated nearly $200 million at the global box office on a budget of under $75 million. In my mind, too expensive, but I understand why. Ticket to Paradise, with George Clooney and, of course, Julia Roberts, snared nearly $170 million globally on a budget of $60 million. By the way, that's a great romantic pairing. George Clooney is a dashing, debonair guy. We know in real life he's married to a very impressive woman who might outshine him in terms of her abilities on the world stage. But so what? George Clooney's always going to be George Clooney. But still, you believe George Clooney can be... what was that movie he was in with Michelle Pfeiffer? Was it One Fine Day? I like that movie too. While Anyone But You had a slow start at the box office, ticket sales increased in both its second and third weekend in theaters. And when sales started to dip, I mean, it's amazing. That means word of mouth is getting people to come to the theaters. But something else made people come to the theaters to see Anyone But You too. And when sales started to dip, they fell just 27% or less in each of the next 5 weeks. Typically, films will see sales drop around 50% to 70% in each week after their opening weekend. Gluck, listen up, Hollywood, listen good. Gluck attributes much of the film's box office popularity to word of mouth and the power of TikTok. In the wake of its release, users on the social media platform began making short videos of themselves singing and dancing to Natasha Bedingfield's 2004 single Unwritten. The song is featured in the film, and cast and crew are singing and dancing to it during the final credits. It would not surprise me at all if this became a textbook case of modern Hollywood marketing, Meslow says. Just like Oppenheimer, it's really harnessed TikTok and the star's presence on it better than probably any movie ever released. Now, let me point something out to you. We might bag on the TikTok generation, but they want to be romantic. Barbenheimer was a romantic phenomenon. The idea, it's not, forget what Barbie, talk about smash the patriarchy, whatever. None of that. But putting Oppenheimer and Barbie together and celebrating these two disparate films as a cultural event is inherently a romantic notion. Now, whether you liked Barbenheimer, whether you liked Oppenheimer and Barbie, and you like them together as Barbenheimer, that remains to be seen. I'm not here to tell you whether you should or shouldn't. I'm just saying as a potential way to market films, anything you can do, because whether you're romantic or not, everybody wants to have a good time. And one of the things about social media that has been shown to be a truism over the last 15 years is people like to be seen themselves having a good time on social media, or people like to watch people that are having a good time on social media so they can feel good about the world if they themselves aren't. So having something that that's why the Tide Pod Challenge came about. That's why the ASL, the Ice Bucket Challenge. I mean, people want to have that, and that is inherently kind of a romantic thing. Kind of sharing some fun, having camaraderie, bonding together. I mean, yeah, we don't want things to be stupid and people to eat detergent. That's not romantic. That's just stupid. But there's a lot of stupid people on the internet too, and they're not going to ever have romantic lives. So, stupid is as stupid does. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe they will. Maybe they'll find one another and you can eat Tide Pods together. I don't know. Even Tide Pods. That's a meme from yesteryear. But the way to market over social media is something that an understanding like this dance that people picked up on at the end of the movie. This was something that spontaneously occurred. I mean, you hear a banger of a song from 20 years ago. It doesn't have to be a classic tune. It doesn't have to be, like Stand By Me was popularized again in the 80s when the movie came out. But or Lean on Me was popularized as well. Now, you don't have to have that. Even things that are more modern but seen in a different way can become very popular. And that's an interesting way to market something. Hollywood will now find out if Anyone But You is a unicorn or a replicable theatrical strategy. The film benefited from several key factors, including a blockbuster-free January and limited direct competition. But the industry is already leaning into a strategy that relies on potential sleeper hits like Anyone But You. Major studios have pledged to bring more mid-budget films back to theaters. Okay. Let's hope so, because what they've been doing was stupid, and mid-budget movies are where studios, I would dare say, should live. Maybe not what Wall Street wants to hear, but I'll explain why in a moment. Major studios have pledged to bring more mid-budget films back to theaters. Those movies are able to fill the gaps between large tentpole features and provide consistent box office dollars. Hello, that never changed. It was just Hollywood forgot that. They just started chasing ridiculousness. Let's make $200 million movies that make $1 billion rather than make a $30 or $40 million movie that makes $300 million, which is a lot, I think, easier to do. And you can make, well, sort of, just as much profit. While some films will still be released only on streaming platforms, like Glenn Powell's Hitman, which is, I think, a mistake, Hollywood has rediscovered the importance of theatrical as part of overall downstream revenue. Gosh, you think? Theatrical was always important. The people at the top were following what Wall Street wanted, and the people at Wall Street don't know fuck all about the motion picture business. All they do is look at analytics. Analytics could not have told you that Anyone But You would have become a hit dance meme on TikTok. Analytics don't go that far. They don't predict those things. Maybe one day they will. Maybe deep learning AI can figure that shit out. But it's just like you can't set out to make a cult movie. The Rocky Horror Picture Show, the people that were making it didn't think maybe this is going to be a midnight perennial for the next 50 years. They didn't think about that. It happened on its own. You can't create this stuff. People bring forth these kinds of things because for whatever reason, these things hit at certain times and you can't, no matter how many analytics you run, you can't just assume that someone's going to start a TikTok dance craze with a 20-year-old song they saw a cast and crew singing on the end of credits of a movie. That doesn't necessarily always, it's not going to translate. And the first person that tries it, what if we tried to do an Anyone But You TikTok dance craze in our new movie? You will fail. You will fail because you tried to do it. And the point was that no one created that. Somebody just thought it up. And then it caught on. You can't predict that and you can't force it. People try. I know there's content creators that rent out homes and try and create banger content. And, just because it's stupid doesn't mean people are going to watch it. Notably, while some films will still be released only on streaming platforms, Hollywood has rediscovered the importance of theatrical as a part of overall downstream revenue. A film's debut in theaters creates buzz and a sense of quality that follows it through on-demand sales and onto streaming platforms. Notably, Sony's No Hard Feelings, that's the Jennifer Lawrence raunchy comedy about a kid who needed to get laid, and she was hired to help him do that, which tallied $83 million globally in 2023 on a budget of $45 million, became a top streaming film on Netflix when it was released on the platform in October. Now, let me just point out that No Hard Feelings cost, you might think, well, how does it cost $45 million? That's the Jennifer Lawrence factor. You don't get Jennifer Lawrence in your movie. You don't get Katniss Everdeen to be in your movie. You don't get Mystique, young Mystique, to be in your movie without paying some money, and it drives the budget up. But what's interesting is Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell, they probably didn't cost nearly that much, hence the $25 million budget, but they're on the upswing. So Will Gluck and the team who made Anyone But You really benefited from being on the upswing as opposed to hiring actors that everybody knows. But still, No Hard Feelings. I mean, that movie probably was never going to make... Would I have spent $45 million on that movie? No. But having Jennifer Lawrence in that movie certainly meant something, but it didn't mean enough to make the movie earn more than $83.8 million. What that says about the movie, I think it's about the overall quality of the movie and what people wanted to see, and less about Jennifer Lawrence. But that's just me. Anyone But You is destined for Netflix after it wraps up its theatrical run as part of a streaming distribution deal with Sony signed in 2021. Sony knows what's up. Sony, they don't have a streaming service. Now, you might say, well, Rob, doesn't Sony have Madam Web in theaters? Yes. That's a whole another thing that I will never understand. I'm like, Tom Rothman, you just don't understand sci-fi, fantasy, and horror. I'm just saying. You think you do, but I don't even know how Madam Web got made. And no, I haven't seen it yet. It's sort of become a cottage industry to make videos hating on Madam Web. I think Gary Beekler, Nerdrotic, did a really good one. And by the way, I am so tired of people saying to me that Gary Beekler is a misogynist and he's hateful and a white supremacist. No, he's not. Now, is he crass in a punk rock sort of way? Certainly. Does he not pull his punches? Absolutely. But I would recommend watching his 15-minute video essays. Now, is he provocative? Yes. Does he have clickbaity thumbnails? Certainly. But his information is good. It's well thought out, it's well researched, and the videos are quite well made, and they're very entertaining to watch. Now, I understand. People who watch my channel, some of them are like, how can you support people that are so different than you? I'm like, look, that's what I like. I don't like people that are like me, because I'm like me. I would hope there's not a lot of people in the world like me. The world would be certainly better off. But I'm just saying that his videos are worth watching because the information and how it's presented is entertaining, but also very enlightening because there's research that goes into that stuff. And I always have people coming at me and like, you haven't even watched his videos, and you're mad at me for being friends with people. Look, I'm friends with people across the spectrum. I like good work. I do. Even if people are diametrically opposed to everything I believe in, if they do good work, even if I hate what they're doing, I know this seems strange, but I'll watch their work because I want to know why I don't like what they're saying. It's ridiculous to just hate on people and not know or anything about them. That's why canceling people who want to cancel speakers on college campuses that they disagree with are fucking moronic. And as a matter of fact, those people I immediately discount as being serious, intellectually driven people. They're certainly not romantics. And they're all narcissists because it's the way I feel. I don't want to hear anything that doesn't make me feel good. Fuck off. I hate that shit. It's more interesting when you're in college. Go to lectures for people you disagree with and understand what they have to say. And you know what? Maybe you'll learn something. Maybe they'll surprise you. Maybe you'll still hate them, or maybe you'll hate them more. But you'll know why you hate them. You won't just parrot back what you heard or read somebody else say. You'll be able to answer these questions by yourself with knowledge that you've gained on your own. I know some people are thinking to themselves right now, well, Rob, you haven't even seen Madam Web yet. I know. But I'll tell you something. I've seen enough movies in my life, and I've read enough things in my life, and I've experienced both sides of the aisle on movies that were good and movies that were bad, and people said this, and I felt differently. I don't need to go see Madam Web based on what I've seen already. I've gleaned enough in my time on this planet to understand that I don't need to see that movie. That movie would actually just depress me. It would just depress me because I would sit there and be like, I could make a movie that costs 10 times less than this. That would be better than this movie. And yet this is the movie that got made. I mean, the funniest thing about Madam Web is watching Dakota Johnson go on talk shows and talk about this movie, which you get to see a lot of in Gary Beekler's video. And it's painful to watch. She's hilarious. She's so self-aware. I've loved her since I first saw her in The Social Network. And, I love her parents. But anyway. Gluck, who enjoys taking on a wide variety of projects, expects he will continue to write and direct films like Anyone But You going forward. I think I'd rather take a gamble on a mid to low budget movie than a $200 million movie, Gluck said, because my whole career has been mid-level budget movies. But to me, the fun part is always outperforming. It's always great when the expectations are low. It's really fun to be written off and outperform. And then this does come from MSNBC, and the article says, disclosure, Comcast is the parent company of NBC Universal and CNBC. So there you go. And I thought that, this was very interesting. But now, here's what I think is fascinating about the rom-com as a genre. By definition, it's not expensive. So we now live in a world where box office is really being driven by Wall Street and corporations. And corporations want to see these kinds of major profits happen. But let's do a little math. Now, I wrote a letter to a producer friend who I greatly respect, who's incredibly successful. But I at press time, I hadn't heard back from them, so I didn't hear back about the letter that I sent. But I'm gonna share the letter with you. And by the way, I have something fun to share with you that I forgot to load up, but I'm going to show anyway because it's quite interesting. Now I just have to find it, which I think I can because I think it's I found it. I already found it. See, it wasn't that hard to find. So here's the thing. So let's look at a few movies. All right. Let's start with Anyone But You. So we're going to go with the conventional wisdom idea, and that a movie has to gross 4 times as much as it cost to break even. Now, some people would say 3. Conventional wisdom used to be 3. I'm going to go 4. And I'm going to go 4 because, first of all, what happens is, remember, a studio only takes home about half of what a movie makes at the box office. The other half, sometimes it can take a little bit more, but for the sake of argument, let's just call it half because they have to share with movie theaters and things like that. So if a movie grosses $100 million, the studio is only going to see $50 million. So there you go. So let's do a little bit of the can't be a classroom without the classroom. So Anyone But You had a reported production budget of $25 million. That means under our metric, the movie has to gross $100 million to earn out, to be at 0. So it's earned its money back because remember, the studios only get half, but they have to pay for marketing. They also have to pay for their own overhead, their operating costs. And studios like to charge their entire year's operating cost to each movie. Whether that's fair or not, it's something they can do if they want. But we won't get into that. We'll just talk about this as a movie. So Anyone But You needs to break even at $100 million. Now, Anyone But You right now has made $170 million and change. So you're now looking at you've got $70 million beyond the $100 million. So you split that in half. So you've got $35 million. So the profit on Anyone But You is $35 million. So you get your and then you roll your production costs into that, which was $25 million. So ultimately you get $10 million is how much Anyone But You has made for the studio. So on a $25 million investment, you make $10 million, which isn't bad. That's not bad. I mean, you're looking at good mode is at 40%. You know, you've spent $25 million and then you've made back your cost, your $25 million, and then you get back $10 million, which is like 40%. That's really good on your investment. Getting 40% back on your money is a very good business. So you've made $10 million on it. You've made $10 million profit on a $25 million investment. Not bad. That's good business. If you could do that on every movie, that's a really good business, and Hollywood used to be very good at doing that. Now, what's happened is Hollywood would rather bank on big IPs because big IPs are known quantities, so they feel much more comfortable in putting money into big IPs. So say, you know, a Marvel movie at its height, you know, the 23 movies of the Infinity Saga, each averaged out to $1 billion gross. So let's say a movie costs $200 million. Okay? A movie costs $200 million and it grosses $1 billion. So it earns out at $800 million. So you have $200 million left. Okay? You have $200 million left, but the studio only takes home half. So you have $100 million. So of that $100 million, okay, which the studio gets, you've spent $200 million and you've made $100 million profit. So you've made 50% on your money. That's pretty good. But 50% on your money on $100 million, so you know you've got that you've got all your money back, and then you made $50 million or you made $100 million on your $200 million investment. But still, you know, you can make $10 million on $25 million, or you spend $200 million to make $50 million. Or $100 million. What did I say, $100 million? So you know what I mean. And what would you rather do? Like, and how many $200 million movies do you make a year? 2, 3, maybe? I mean, otherwise it's tough business. But if you make $25 million movies or $50 million movies and get that kind of a return, isn't that a better way to do business? So where's the advantage? And by the way, anyone but you is still making money. So it could up those numbers. But the amount of money that you're spending, the $200 million investment, and then remember, if you were to take, you could make 8 anyone but yous that one of your $200 million movies cost. So then you would have 8 films to then send through SVOD and put on your streaming service, which makes that money. I know you only made $10 million on your $25 million investment, but still, then you've got, if you keep doing those kinds of things and you made 8 movies and each one of those movies made $10 million, you're making $80 million and you have 8 movies, and you're only making $20 million less profit than a $200 million movie makes, and that's only one movie. So you can spend the money and you then have 8 movies to promote on your platform that have been successful, as opposed to one movie that may or may not have been successful. And I'm saying that obviously they have to be good movies. So why is it that Hollywood only seems to be interested at the studio level at making these giant $200 million tentpoles? Well, the answer to that is because it's a lot harder to find original scripts and filmmakers. I don't even think that there are enough filmmakers right now in Hollywood that could even pass muster. If someone said to me, Rob, you get $200 million, go prove your point. Go make 8 $25 million movies. Could you find 8 directors that you knew could make a $25 million movie that would make $200 million at the global box office? I would be hard-pressed to do that. I mean, I'd go get certain filmmakers and go, can you do this? Can you do this? But would they have a movie like Anyone But You that hits? I don't know. I do think that Hollywood needs to go back to making, they need to foster new talent. They can bet on new directors. You can bet on a first-time director to make a movie for $50 million as opposed to making, I mean, Colin Trevorrow made Safety Not Guaranteed, $1 million movie, and they give him Jurassic World. That worked out. But that's an outlier. That doesn't happen all the time. And so how is Hollywood, and by the way, look at Christopher Nolan. I do not understand why someone doesn't look at Christopher Nolan and say, okay, he's got the perfect career. He makes a really interesting independent movie Following. Follows it up with Memento. Memento burns up the festival circuit. People like it. He gets noticed, but it's his second film. It's not even his first movie. They notice it. Christopher Nolan's like, okay, what does Warner Brothers do? They give him the safest thing that they can possibly give him, which is Insomnia, which is a remake of a Danish movie. Don't want to say Danish movie. It's a remake of a very good Danish film. They bring it. You've got Hollywood stars in it. You know, someone like Robin Williams. Okay, let's see what the kid's got. Does really well. Movie, I mean, it's not a huge, gigantic blockbuster, but it's a respectable, call it a studio programmer. It's a respectable studio programmer. And it shows that Nolan can direct, and more importantly, he can direct stars. Which means, from a studio perspective, he's bankable. He's got a vision. So when you see something like that happen, it's like, okay, Chris, you know, we'd love to see Batman come back, a valuable IP. It's kind of been moribund since the 90s. We had Batman Forever, and Batman and Robin kind of killed that franchise off. So basically, you've proven that you not only can make two really good indie films, one of them, Memento, might be a stone cold classic, and you've made a remake for the studio, a studio programmer that you did a very good job on with two big stars in the movie. So we feel confident enough that we can let you take your own take and go make Batman. Win for the studio. And then what happens? He does one for them, and then he does one for himself. He goes out and adapts The Prestige, then comes back and makes The Dark Knight. Uses The Dark Knight cachet and comes up with Inception that even the studio thought was going to be a bomb. Nope. Closes in on $1 billion. And Chris Nolan has completely managed his career. The fact that Warner Brothers fucked him over on Tenet during the pandemic, maybe he'll go back to Warner Brothers. What a mistake that was. I mean, it was a benefit for Universal because they got Oppenheimer, but I mean, the studio that Nolan carefully built his career at, and you know, Nolan could have asked for another $200 million. He didn't. He didn't do that. He's a smart guy. He'll be in the game for the rest of his life. So, same with Denis Villeneuve, who's, you know, staying with that Warner Brothers action because he's smart. But Hollywood, the lesson of this is that Hollywood should be making mid-level movies. Making movies like literary adaptations, like Hunt for Red October. $35 million movie, grosses what, $300 million? Come on. That's the way to go. That's the way to do things. Will it happen? I don't know. Will we have romance on our civilization where the rom-com can come back? I hope so, because I like rom-com movies. You know, I got to tell you, as much as I like horror, science fiction, and fantasy, I do. They're not my favorite movies to rewatch. I don't rewatch horror movies. I don't rewatch fantasy, and I don't rewatch much science fiction over and over and over again. I mean, unless it's got a human component. Like, I love Arrival. I love Amy Adams in that movie. Love that movie because it's about people. So often genre stuff, once you've seen it a couple of times, I like watching movies over and over again about human characters. So sci-fi, fantasy, and horror is not something I revisit a lot. I like to watch that with other people. But alone, I could watch Almost Famous. I could watch Goodfellas and The Godfather. I mean, I could watch Jerry Maguire, you know, Cameron Crowe. Jerry Maguire, Almost Famous. I could watch those movies like forever. I mean, I could, because they're about people. But anyway, studios, I can't tell you, I've never seen Hollywood in the state that it's in. The 35 years I've been here, it's a mess. Nobody knows what's going on. The new OpenAI, that new Soma, whatever it's called, you know, people are like, are we going to have jobs anymore? And I'm like, look, people are going to want to look at other people. They are. They're going to want to look at other people's faces. By the way, you want to see people who know how to make a movie? Go find on YouTube. Go find Toho released a video. It's 6 minutes long on the visual effects of Godzilla -1. Go watch that video, and I would encourage anybody who watches this channel who might work in the entertainment business to go watch that video and watch people who really know how to make movies and ask yourself, what the fuck happened to Hollywood? Because when you see how they did that, how a team of like 35 people were able to pull off those effects, you'll ask yourself why the director of that film work came out of special effects. The director knew what he was doing, knew how to do things. He got it. And that video alone, I really hope that Godzilla Minus One, my fingers crossed. I've never wanted to see somebody win an Academy Award more than I want to see the people that did the visual effects for Godzilla Minus One to win. Because you know what's really interesting? Stanley Kubrick, my favorite director, never won an Oscar for directing movies. But he did win an Oscar because he was one of the people that spearheaded the special effects for 2001. So he won a special effects Oscar. I think they got a special Oscar for special effects. But the director of Godzilla Minus One is part of the effects team. So he might follow in Kubrick's footsteps. And if they get their best visual effects award at the Oscars, which they totally deserve, and when you see that video, it's really entertaining, first of all. But you'll look at it with your jaw open. And it's really, really good. So check it out. Enjoy it. And get back to me. I've got a lot of banger letters that I want to read. Let's see who's here. Oh, the Vixter. I love the Vixter. If I lived in the UK, I'm sure we would get in lots of trouble. The Vixter's here. Wait a minute. And I was just missing where I was. Where was I supposed to be? With all my questions lined up and ready to go. Well, I'll just start from where I was. So let's start with Jay Bling. Jay Bling says, I think it's simple. As we currently talk about comic book movie fatigue, we previously had rom-com fatigue. The genre needed a breather, not death. Could be. You know, movies live and die whether they're good or not. That's really the only criteria. Are movies good? Do people like them? I think it wasn't so much we got a lot of predictable Matthew McConaughey rom-coms. We got a lot of predictable ones that weren't good. So, Gio Diaz, my man Gio Diaz says, hey, I saw an upcoming show from Film Threat called Versus, and I saw you're on it. Can't wait to watch it. It's true. I'm on a Film Threat show, 3 o'clock Monday, Versus. Chris Gore said, hey, will you be on the show? I said, sure, Chris. I'll totally be on the show. Sign me up. I don't know what's going to happen on it. I don't really know much about it. But, Gio, I hope I don't let you down. I don't know if I'm fighting somebody, or is it like that Japanese movie Versus? The Vixter says, anyone but you is fun. I liked all the Shakespeare Easter eggs in it too. When Harry Met Sally is still my favorite rom-com. And Hitman is great. So you've already seen it. Does it make you laugh every time she goes, is there something wrong with my face? And never, every time I see that, I've seen that a million times, and every time I see it, it's still funny. The stupid wagon wheel coffee table. I thought you liked it. I was being nice. Movie's great. If you guys haven't seen When Harry Met Sally, what is wrong with you? Make it a double bill with Amelie and make it your Bob Burnett's Return to Romance night for you. Check it out. Vixter goes on to say, more romance than rom-com, but I love Before We Go, directed and starring Chris Evans and Alice Eve. Two people getting to know each other in one night in NYC. I haven't seen that. I got to see that Before We Go. I know the movie. I just haven't seen it. I'll take it. Garrett Groover says it's amazing how Last of the Mohicans cost $40 million to make, unadjusted for inflation, of course. Can you imagine trying to make that movie today? Yes. I just don't know. I mean, if you think about it, there's not a lot of visual effects in there. A lot of it was done in camera. And that's how you do that. I think one of the things that we've forgotten how to do is movies like that. And, you know, when you have a director like Michael Mann who's insisting on that kind of authenticity, that's what you get. A World in Pajamas, Tracy says, Amelie is one of my favorite movies, as it should be. Have you watched Masquerade? The star, Pierre Nini is currently making a new Count of Monte Cristo. I've not watched... Wait, Masquerade, the Rob Lowe movie? Probably not. I'm lucky to catch you live this evening. I'm just back from the pub. Man, I want to go to the pub with you. I wonder how many pints do you drink, Tracy? Like, are you a pint girl or do you spirits? Or can you do both? I love drinking beer. It comes in pints. I love drinking pints of beer. And one of the great things about being in Australia is that so does everybody else. We don't have much of and in LA, there's not so much there's something civilized about drinking pints. Not getting a pitcher, but getting a pint. Like a true pint. I love those pint glasses that are not the like, they're circular, but they have the ridges at the top, or like 3/4 of the way up. I love those. Kilkenny, the cream of Ireland. Man, do I love pints, and I miss pints. So I don't know what Masquerade is. I got to check it out. Dan Candy says, amazing topic tonight, Rob. Anyway, can you rank the Blofelds? Ooh, rank the Blofelds. Man, that's hard. Okay, look, I know people, Blofelds. Look, Christoph Waltz is not my favorite Blofeld. Let me just say that right away. I didn't like what they did with Blofeld in that movie. And Charles Gray, Making Mud Pies 007. And as much as I love Telly Savalas, I'll just never see him as Blofeld, even though I love On Her Majesty's Secret Service, And Donald Pleasance, it's hard to look at Donald Pleasance because Donald Pleasance has been, Dr. Evil's Donald Pleasance. Kill Bond now. It's a tough one. I have to tell you, this is a terrible. I'm going to go off the reservation here, and I'm going to be held. This is going to be held accountable. I'll be held accountable for this, and this is not going to be a popular answer. Max von Sydow. Max von Sydow. In Never Say Never Again. I know. It's a terrible thing to say. But he most embodied... Blofeld was... Is that terrible, Dan? Have I let you down? That's it's so funny that Never Say Never Again is a remake of McQuarrie's Thunderball. The voice in Thunderball is the best Blofeld voice, I think. Anyway, what does that say about me? I have no idea. I hope I didn't just let a lot of people down. People are going, what? Burnett doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I don't. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe I just think I do. But I think I've just betrayed myself. But I don't think Never Say Never Again is a particularly good movie. But Klaus Maria Brandauer, Kim Basinger, Max von Sydow, Barbara Carrera. There's a lot to love in that movie. Maybe there's not enough, but there is a lot to love. Middle-aged mutant ninja turtle. Actually, middle-aged mutant turtle. No ninja. How can you not be a ninja? Don't you know the Burnett adage? There's nothing that cannot be made better with the proper application of ninjas. There's a YouTuber who condemns people for rooting for movies to fail, but he gives out the entire plot to Madam Web so people cannot go watch it and tells people not to watch it, which will cause the movie to fail. What's the difference between both? Well, you know what? If a movie's already failed, like I get angry about things like that. I feel I feel that when it comes to Madam Web, and I want Chris Stuckman was very nice about Madam Web in his review of it, but you could see, having just made his own movie, and he really understands how hard it is to make movies. Stuckman's like me. The idea of Madam Web, you want it to be good, but to see that the studio itself and everybody involved, like they put all these people together, and you're like, who made the call here? Who made this happen? And I think it's frustrating. So I do think that somebody can feel both things. I think that when you get angry and when you see something like Madam Web, it should be called out. It's a waste. It's as if the studio didn't even try. I don't know. Let's see. But that's an interesting thing. It's a really interesting question to ask. Garrett Groover says, I know people hate Zaslav, but I agree with his decision to end direct-to-streaming movies on Max in favor of theatrical releases, 100%. All movies, I mean, assuming movies are good enough to put in theaters. If a movie I mean, in a way, I think it's anathema to what I believe in, but to give away, to not release like Acme or Coyote versus Acme, I think is, unless it's terrible, I think it's a bad thing. Tracy says, I love Guinness. In my mom's day, where girls were banned from drinking pints, so they would buy 2 glasses. Also, whiskey shots. Yeah, there you go. Banned from drinking pints. My God, how uncivilized for all you people in England, or maybe you try to be civilized. What did you think of the Brosnan Bond eras? You know what? I like half of Die Another Day. I really like GoldenEye, even though Bond disappears for like 20 minutes in it. I like Tomorrow Never Dies, but it was edited. They cut a lot out. And World Is Not Enough isn't bad either, but the scripts were not where they should have been for all 4 of his movies. And I feel that Brosnan was a great Bond, but the Brosnan Bonds, I like watching them. I do. I love when Terry Hatcher says, what was the last thing I said to you? I'll be right back. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff in those movies. I just wish the scripts were better. They certainly look good. They're really well made. I love Kleinman's opening credit sequences for him. And other than Madonna's song, which is a major disappointment, I like the theme songs. I like a lot of the Brosnan era. I just wish that he got his Skyfall or his Goldfinger. And I don't even love Skyfall, but, you know, a movie that people revere. Because I feel like he gave it his all. He was a great Bond, but he never got the scripts that he should have. He deserved a better script. But I do like, I think GoldenEye is the closest to the greatest of his movies, but it should have been better than it was. And he disappears for the movie too much. And it needed more of a harder edge. It was playful, but it needed a harder edge. That's just me, though. AJDZ says, Glenn and Sydney for Gambit and Rogue. Can you see it? Yeah, I could, but, you know, I don't know. I mean, you got the Cajun, you got that whole Louisiana thing going down, the Thieves Guild and all that. I don't know. I mean, Glenn Powell doesn't seem like that to me. I don't see the Creole in him, and I would like to, you know, but they definitely could play. I mean, I'll tell you one thing. If Sydney Sweeney, I could see more Scott Summers and Jean Grey. Glenn Powell could totally be Cyclops. And you believe he has the charisma to lead the X-Men. I love James Marsden as Cyclops, but he was so, like, morose. I want to see the Glenn Powell version of Cyclops being like, I'm a badass. I lead the X-Men. Let's go get some. Yeah. Carnell says, I love them dearly, and I have to say Her was the last rom-com I truly enjoyed, but I've always had a difficult time picking When Harry Met Sally and Lost in Translation as my favorite film. Good calls. I don't think of Her as a rom-com. I think of Her as one of the best science fiction movies of the 21st century, and by the way, that movie has one of the greatest and most shocking revelations in terms of what it made me feel of any movie that I've ever seen. That's not hyperbole. There's a moment, because I didn't know anything about Her other than Spike Jonze directed it, and, you know, it was about an operating system. If you guys haven't seen Her, there is a moment in that movie, a moment of revelation that hits you, the audience, and Joaquin Phoenix at the same time. And when you realize what's going on, it's like, oh, shit. And the audience is made to feel at that moment exactly what Joaquin Phoenix is feeling. And he stumbles and sits down. It is a great moment. The people who've seen it know exactly what I'm talking about. If you've never seen Her, look, I'm not saying that, you know, it's not like, no, Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. It's not like that. it's an emotionally devastating moment that really packs a wallop. So if you know that movie or haven't seen the movie, and it is a great romance too. So I just don't think it's much of a comedy. I think it's a cautionary tale, and it's a great science fiction movie. And When Harry Met Sally and Lost in Translation are both great movies. Both great movies. Joseph Michael says, do you think Nelson Peltz will win his proxy fight against Disney? Would he actually be good for the company? I don't think he'd be good for the company. I think all he cares about is making money. I don't think he particularly cares about making movies or anything like that. And I get it. These guys, they're playing a finance game with stocks and money, and they're not interested in the product. See, I think the real problem is that we need people that work at the studios that love movies. I mean, everybody loves money, but movie studios were never supposed to be run. Movie studios, by definition, you got to be a romantic to run a movie studio. You can't be a fucking captain of industry or master of finance and expect that you're going to make movies. Because by definition, you can't be a romantic and do that. Because the loving money is great and becoming rich is awesome. And I'd love to be in that position. But I'd much rather, if someone said to me I could be comfortable, if somebody said to me, they said something to me like, okay, Rob, we know you want to be rich. We'll pay you $5 million a year for the rest of your life, but that's all you're ever going to make. But you get to run a studio and you can greenlight whatever you want. I'd say, fuck yeah, sign me up. That would be I would love that. $5 million, I could live high on the hog because I don't have any expensive tastes. Maybe I'd buy a Prius. I have a Prius. I mean, I might buy like a BMW hybrid, that cool car. That'd be like my biggest indulgence. But I'd live in the same house. I'd build my home theater. But if $5 million for the rest of my life, that's a huge amount of money anyway. I would have money to burn. I could do everything I want. I could buy $1 million projector, build a great home theater in this garage. I would turn this structure. I'd probably knock this garage down. I'm in a garage. I'm in a separate garage. I would knock this garage down. I'd take the footprint of this and I'd turn it into a new observatory where I'm sitting now. I'd turn it into a home theater, a real home theater with like 30 seats and $1 million projector and a $1 million sound system. And then I build the office upstairs. There's no upstairs, but I would make an upstairs. And then on the top of the upstairs, I'd have an outdoor party deck with a grill and stuff. That would be my biggest indulgence. That's all I would need. So, but I don't think Nelson Peltz, all these guys, they want to make money. And Nelson Peltz, you talk, well, the stock price is, I know it's not. The stock price isn't going because they're not concentrating on their core business. And their core business is making entertainment, whether it's theme parks, cruises, or movies, or TV, or whatever. It's their core business. Focus on that. Their 100th anniversary came and went, and what they used to release. This is the crazy thing to me. Like Disney has been releasing their Pixar movies, like Seeing Red, Soul. They're putting them out in theaters. Nobody even knows they're there. Disney used to make all of its money, well, most of it, back in the 60s, the 70s, even the 80s. Song of the South, which they disown, was re-released last theatrically in 1986. They would re-release their classic animated films and their classic kids movies so new generations could see them. Why they didn't take that strategy and figure out, I know the world's changed, but my God, how do you release Pixar movies and don't tell people that they're out? Seeing Red, they could have given it a little bit of a boost and given it an ad campaign. People might have gone to see the movie. Everybody needs a place to take their kids. It's like, Nelson Peltz, I don't think he would be able to tell us anything about. I do believe that my mouse just ran out of juice. So not only did my mouse run out of juice, which means, of course, that I have a problem because I can't, or at least that my computer froze. I have no idea because I don't know where. Hang on a second. Let me see if. That's odd. I can't do anything, and I don't know where my other platform is. That's not good. Not good. Anyway, Red French Moon says, Working Girl, superb Melanie Griffith, strong female, like they knew how to write and forgot today. Vulnerable but determined Harrison Ford. I love that movie. Who doesn't love that film? It's a great film, terrific movie. And Working Girl's terrific. I think, was Working Girl directed by Mike Nichols? I don't remember. Oh, Dan Candy says the correct answer for Blofeld was John Hollis and For Your Eyes Only. But seriously, it was Telly Savalas. No, man, come on, it was Max von Sydow. The thing is, you can't say that John Hollis and For Your Eyes Only was Blofeld. I'll build you a delicatessen, or I'll buy you a delicatessen in Stacyfield. You can't say that because theoretically he wasn't allowed to be that. We all knew he was Blofeld, but you couldn't say that he was Blofeld. So because of the rights issues, which was problematic. All right, now that my mouse is working again briefly, Joseph Michael sends in a $20 super chat. Oh yes, okay. This is let me juice up while I answer this question. This is a good question. Joseph Michael says, "Do you have any more thoughts on OpenAI's Sora? A lot of people who work in the VFX and animation industry are quite traumatized about what this program could mean for their jobs." For those of you who have not heard or seen online what's dropped in the last couple days, to be honest, it's shocking. And it is OpenAI that gave us ChatGPT, now has a visual component, not just making pictures, called Sora. And using prompts, it can give you up to 1 minute, as far as I know, 1 minute of fully rendered. Like you can say things like, show me show me what California looked like. Give me an image of California in 1850. And it will give you 1 minute of a drone shot of a beautifully rendered exterior with like two cowboys riding on horses. It's conjuring this out of thin air. I mean, it's borrowing from the world around it. It's stunning. And it is insane. Now, and by the way, what we're seeing now, if you go look at it, think about it this way. And everybody online is saying the same thing, but I'm not. It's true. What we are seeing from this technology today is the worst it will ever be. Where will it be in a year or 5 years or a decade from now? So the question is, will everybody be out of a job? Well, here's the thing. I want to believe, and this is a philosophical, and I've said this before, I want to believe that one of the reasons people like to watch movies and TV shows with actors in them is we are gleaning. I mean, the best, I've always said, the best fiction is the most truthful. And when we watch movies and TV, we want to see other human beings that we recognize as human beings. Like, that's not to say animation isn't great. I love animation, I love anime and all that, but we know we're watching animation. So I would say the animation industry, it's rough. But I would say people are always going to watch other human beings. Now, video games, animation, all kinds of things, this new technology is staggering in its implications. Once they figure out, and I've said this, I've been saying this on the show, in not very long, you can say, okay, give me Star Wars. Please generate Star Wars for me, but I want George C. Scott as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I want Cary Grant. I want a young Cary Grant as Luke Skywalker. And I want, take your pick. Rhett Butler. No, not Clark Gable. I don't know. Somebody else. We're not too long that an AI program could give you Star Wars shot for shot. It'll look exactly like Star Wars. It'll give you the whole music, and it will have replaced the main characters with those actors that'll have perfectly rendered voices. And what's going to happen with entertainment is that's what's going to be, I think, the norm. Is that people, they're first going to start in self-inserting or doing things with movies that already exist. They will be digitized, or OpenAI or whatever. All the movies that have ever existed will be fed into these systems. They'll all be cataloged there, and eventually you'll be able to just make up shit. Like, I want to do a story about anything, and it will pump out for you whatever you want. It will be staggering in its implications. And the question is, for me, somebody that I love the process of making movies. That process will be eliminated. It'll be gone. You just type in a prompt and you'll get a 2-hour movie kicked out. Now, we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. So then the question needs to be asked, and I think it's a fundamental philosophical question. Where does that leave us as human beings? Are we going to want to see, like, there's going to be some things that AI can't duplicate. Like, already now, for instance, everyone that you listen to singing is like singing with auto-tune. When they're recording things, everyone's like auto-tuned. I fucking hate it. I can't stand auto-tune. Give me somebody that can, give me the kid from Greta Van Fleet. Let me listen to that guy sing. Or I'd still like to listen to Ann Wilson, one of the greatest, or Annie Lennox or Ann Wilson, any of the Annies, singing, belting out some bangers. Give me a jazz quartet or jazz trio. You know, you're going to have AI will be able to duplicate anything you ever wanted to hear. They'll even be able to duplicate the mistakes. They'll figure out every player who ever lived, and you can do John Williams, any composer. Give me Beethoven's 12th, 13th, and 14th symphonies, and you'll get it. You'll get it. We're there. We're there. The question is, wouldn't you rather sit in a smoky bar in Paris? Don't tell me if you don't smoke. I get it. But you know what I mean? You're in Paris. It's 2:00 in the morning. You're listening to a jazz trio. You're nursing your 11th pint, or maybe you've been drinking all night and you're nursing a glass of wine. You look over in this smoky-filled bar and you see somebody who's just had a terrible breakup, and maybe she's been in the corner crying, or maybe you were looking for a he, whatever, and you lock eyes, and then you wind up going home together in the rain or something. I think that people are always going to want to have those experiences. They're always going to want to get out, and no matter how good AI is never going to duplicate the experience of going out into the world. And if anything, maybe a byproduct of our artificial intelligence age will be that people are just so now that when you have everything, you have nothing. So people will want to look outward. They'll turn off their screens and get the fuck out of Dodge, because if nothing is surprising, if the only entertainment you're going to get is stuff that you've asked for, at the end of the day, it's like, well, you know. And there's a Twilight Zone episode about this, and I forget the name of the episode. Normally I remember, but there's like 157 Twilight Zone episodes. I don't remember all the names of them. But there's an episode where a guy, he dies, and he's gone to heaven. It's like a criminal. He dies, he goes to heaven, and when he's in heaven, everything that happens to him, you know, he gets everything he wants. He gets all the money he wants, he gets all the girls he wants, and he gets everything he wants, and eventually he gets bored. And he goes to his guardian angel, and he's like, look, man, I mean, I want to go to the other place. I hate it here. I'm bored. I have everything I want. It's boring. I don't want to live my life for eternity this way. It's terrible. I want to go to the other place. And the guardian angel says, and here's the Twilight Zone ending, this is the other place. He's been in hell the whole time, but he's already bored to tears, and that's how he's going to be eternally tormented. He can have anything he wants, but then there's it's not hard to do, so it sucks, which is lame. So Sora, Joseph, it's amazing technology. I don't know where it's going to go, and I certainly don't think humanity has thought it through. Certainly the guys in creating the AI, it's that old Ian Malcolm. Just because you can do a thing doesn't mean you should do a thing. Well, they did it, and it's here. Deez Webos says, do you think Ex Machina copied her? No. I mean, these questions are things that have been contemplated in all kinds of forms in science fiction literature forever. So I think they did things in different form, but I mean, Ex Machina, I think, has far more to do, going back even to 1927, to Fritz Lang's Metropolis and Maria, than it does with Her. I think Her was more of a different thing. Darth Plato wants me to speak in French. La vieste. I don't even know what this says. La vie est tri. I don't know what that means. You know what? Don't tell me what it means. I'm going to send this to Elizabeth and to ask her what this means. See if she gets back to me. Because she'll know. Here, what does this mean? What does this mean? This is great. Elizabeth just sent me. Let me just read to you. This is part of my life. So there's this little Bernese Mountain Dog female that's a year old that needs a home. Could make awesome Burnett doodles. I'm just saying. Maybe we should get an Irish setter. That way we can keep making Irish doodles. And she sends me a link. 25 Irish red and white setter puppies for sale. Look, a red and white Irish setter. So pretty. Jesus Christ, we've had 2 litters of puppies, and this is what my girlfriend is thinking of. This is not good. This is my life. I don't know what this means. But it ain't good. Raising puppies is a pain in the ass. I'm just saying. Now, I got some great letters. I got a lot of great letters. And I'm going to read to you now. Because I can. So here it comes. Here we go. Let's see what we got. Now here, you know what? The producer friend of mine I asked has written me back. Here's the answer. The reason why now this comes from I think, one of the most successful unsung producers working today. He prefers to remain, he's got projects going. He's not flamboyant. He's not, building Frank Lloyd Wright houses like Joel Silver. He's not hiring lawyers when he gets thrown off movies, because 1, he doesn't get thrown off movies, and 2, I don't think he'd ever need to do that anyway. But anyway, he's answered me. So this producer friend of mine says, the reason why the studios don't make more movies the size of Anyone But You is twofold. First, there have been more misses than hits in the mid-budget range of production. Anyone But You was the anomaly, where there have been many other movies like that in the past that have lost money. Second, the studios would rather take the big swings, hoping to make hundreds of millions in profit, rather than do the smaller movies that garner a single or a double. As for the smaller movies like, say, Barbarian, it's also easier said than done. There are very few filmmakers like Zach Krieger, the Filippo brothers who made Talk to Me, and Parker Finn who can deliver quality genre movies. There are so many crappy movies that places like Blumhouse make that you've never heard of that quietly disappear on a streaming service. A small fraction of them turn out like Barbarian, Talk to Me, or Smile. Did you see the recent Exorcist requel? Total garbage. Yes, sir. Amen. Good answer. Good answer, but that's where filmmakers like my friend come in to make sure that those movies aren't bad. Elizabeth got back to me. So what Darth Plato is asking, or what Darth Plato says, is it means the wine is poured, you must drink it. There you go. I'm doing a show. I got to tell her I'm doing a show. So there you go. I like that. It means the wine is poured, you must drink it. Story of my life. You pour wine, I'll drink it. So anyway, so I got that letter, which is very interesting. Now, this one comes from our friend Undead Sick, all the way again from Holland. I've been reading Undead Sick's letters over the last couple of nights. He had some interesting stuff. We had disagreements, but he's still writing in. They're still writing in. I keep saying that. Undead Sick. Undead Sick. Just because someone's name is Undead Sick doesn't mean, they're gendered or non-gendered or whatever. I'm just saying. I assume people are men. That's a wrong assumption. I'm just going to make that. Let's go say. Anyway, Undead Sick says, hello, Rob. Well, the day is upon us. I actually saw Madam Web, and I can't wait to give you my review. Ugh, I'm going to hate this. So here it goes. The movie is a piece of trash. Wait, let me take that back for a bit because that is a bit rough. But this is a bad movie on every level. One of the worst things about this picture is that they take one of my favorite modern storylines in Spider-Man comics and they completely drive the train off a cliff. They burned it. They held the comic book in front of my face and then stabbed both my eyes out as punishment. I love Dakota Johnson and Sydney Sweeney, but they had no business being in this awful flick. I mean, the wasted potential is mind-blowing, and you can see from their wooden performance they did not want to be in this film because the material is the equivalent of microwave gas station burrito that tastes good during the first couple of bites but gives you the shits right after. On top of that, they completely butchered two characters that are in my top 10 favorite Spider-Man characters of all time. The first one is Madam Web herself, but the second is Ezekiel Sims, who is such an enigmatic, intriguing, and multi-layered character in the comic books, and they reduced his persona to a cardboard cutout, flat, simplistic, and boring individual. And it hurts me. As a Spider-Man fan, I'm looking at this and I'm asking, what the hell are you doing? But the absolute worst thing about this movie is that it makes a frickin' point to actually insult me as a Spider-Man fan. Really, Sony? You're going to play coy with your cameos? I quote, "Hey, there's my colleague Cassandra. Hey, Cassie, you will never guess who I'm going on a date with tonight. I better keep it mysterious. We frickin' know already. Hello, I'm Emma Roberts, and I play a very important character in this film that is going to a baby shower. Can you guess who I am and who I'm about to give birth to? Yes, screenwriters, we get it. We're fans, not dumb idiots. I mean, the scene where this fellow paramedic takes this mysterious female character to the hospital, where we later get a weird, fine, he gets to have all the fun with none of the responsibilities. What? Come again, please? I couldn't believe what I was watching. I was literally asking myself, is this even real or have I descended into the multiverse? Excuse the pun there, but I just don't understand that for a movie with this budget, this level of production, and to have so much talent with potential behind and in front of the camera, even with the studio backing, although I swear to you this film is riddled with studio interference, it blows my mind that this got past the dailies, filming, post-production, editing, etc. It is beyond me. And this is the second time in 2 years that an IP has actually managed to insult me as a fan. First, they pissed all over The Last of Us, which I loathed, just me personally. And now they've gone so far as to yell at me as a Spider-Man fan that I'm basically a moron. I guess in terms of the positives, the cinematography is pretty decent, but that's it. This is unforgivable to me, and usually I always give a movie a rating either 1 to 10 out of 10 or 1 to 5 stars, but I honestly can't do it. At least not yet, because I need some time to let this sink in as the realization comes to me slowly that we now have our new Batman and Robin. There, I said it. Give me your thoughts, Rob. Greetings from Holland. Undead Sick. This is a great letter. An angry letter. You know, that's why Doomcock says, stay angry, my friends. I don't know how this happens. First of all, how do you do this and damage your own IP? Because the people that are running Hollywood now, I mean, Rothman's been around for a long time. Rothman's running Sony. He should know better than this. But then again, he's the man that made Elektra, with Jennifer Garner after Elektra appeared in Daredevil. I do not know how this kind of thing happens. I think this is regime change right here. Why does this get... Everybody who's involved with this movie gets damaged in some way, including Spider-Man comics. The character of Madam Web is really intriguing, too. How this happened, I have no clue. But it's insane that it did. Insane that it did. Not so... I don't understand why this is allowed to happen. I really don't. Because people don't know. They don't know. And, if you watch, again, Gary Beekler, Nerdrotic, whether you love him or hate him, anybody who wants to see a great piece, do these two things for me. Go watch Chris Stuckman's video about Madam Web and go watch Nerdrotic's video about Madam Web. Because together, the two of them, while their presentation is very different, they're showing people talk about toxic fandom. Our friend Undead Sick here illustrates what we all feel. Like they are not a toxic fan, and I'm sorry, and yet has expressed eloquently what we're all feeling at all of our big IPs. And why is this continually happening to us? Why is it happening to us? And I'll tell you something, this has always pissed me off. I've talked about this before, but Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, Marvel, DC, whatever it is whatever you like, whatever has colonized your brain, these narratives, humanity has always had narratives. We had the Greek gods back in the day, the Greek and Roman gods, even before that, sun gods, whatever gods and there was incredible stories that humanity made up about their gods and also got from the gods themselves, whatever. These stories permeate our brains and they help us make sense of the world. That's why I say the very best fiction has truth in it. The most truthful fiction is the best fiction. This, Madam Web, is gobbledygook. It is, and if you watch some of the clips, especially on Gary's video, Nerdrotic's video, one of the writers says, Madam Web had no backstory, so he didn't have to be beholden to anything. It's like, what the fuck? You're one of the writers of this fucking movie, and you say something like that? And he made another video last week where you had all these writers going, well, they told us not to read the comics, or, well, we shouldn't know the source materials. Well, what? I've heard this thinking all the way back to Star Trek, when Star Trek The Next Generation came about. And I understand that because the first inclination of fans is they want to make a sequel to this or sequel to that, or they get too involved in the minutia and they don't think enough about the story. And Michael Piller did the right thing for Next Generation when he said, look, stop with the external business. All of our stories have to begin and end with our characters. Smart move. That's also true of comic books. But this kind of bullshit where all of this stuff has been laid out, like Undead Six said, like, here's the thing. I don't know if anyone's following Ultimate Spider-Man. Lael Rockwell, who I do Midnight Musings with, he said, you got to go read Ultimate Spider-Man. And I'm like, whatever. Oh my God. There's your multiverse movie. It's like right there. And I hope they adapt it. If I was Sony, they should take that. They should take that Ultimate storyline that's happening right now, get Andrew Garfield to play an older Peter Parker, or better yet, get Tobey Maguire too. Either one could work, and go make that movie. Go make that movie. That movie would make a shit ton of money. And if you did it right and you had a great director and somebody really loved what they were doing here, go find the way Ryan Coogler loved Rocky and ended up making Creed. Go find a filmmaker that loves Spider-Man that's going to take the Ultimate Spider-Man storyline that's going on right now and go make that movie, Sony. Why have you given us Morbius and cut his balls off, and then you give us Madam Web and you don't give us Madam Web? I have no faith in Craven. Maybe Craven will come along and I'll really like it, but God... oh, yeah, let's make Craven's Last Hunt, but we're not going to have him hunt Spider-Man or whatever. He'll hunt Venom or whatever the fuck they do. I can't stand it. I can't stand him. Anyway, here's a letter I hope is good. Matt Rissman. I can't. I can't take these because he sent me pictures. He didn't write a letter. DEI casting. This comes from Scottish Dave. Scottish Dave says, hi, Rob. Thanks for reading my recent letter regarding Larry Niven. Larry Niven is a great science fiction writer who wrote like the Known Space series with Ringworld. He also worked with Jerry Pournelle writing things like The Mote in God's Eye and Lucifer's Hammer and Footfall. But Larry Niven he wrote an animated episode from Star Trek called Slaver Weapon that tied his Known Space series with the Star Trek universe, which is interesting. So anyway, Rob, thanks for reading my recent letter regarding Larry Niven. Today, I want to talk about The Expanse. I just finished watching it, and it was brilliant. Great drama, unforgettable characters, and excellent sci-fi elements. The diversity of the casting, however, was simply outstanding. Why do advocates of DEI not laud this show and shout from the rooftops? I've never seen this show pushed as a great example of DEI. Could it be because the race, gender, and sexual preferences of the characters are unimportant to the contribution that character makes? It doesn't beat you over the head with it? I wonder if that annoys DEI folks. Diversity done right elevates the subject. Done wrong, and we get many of the shows we have today. Your thoughts? Peace and long life, David. Well, David, nailed it. I was maintaining that our civilization was on a pretty good path, an evolutionary path, because eventually we will be accepting of all people. The human race is one race. We certainly have different ethnicities amongst us, but we are one group of people. One. You know, when we stop fighting amongst ourselves, and I honestly believe we're not going to stop doing that until we move off planet. And the thing about what I love about The Expanse is it showed the natural, in my mind, the natural progression of humanity. Once we have the kind of ability to travel around the planet at will, once we can travel to Europe in, say, an hour and a half or something with suborbital flights, and people are traveling around the world, you're going to have people falling in love with people from all shapes, sizes, colors, and creeds. You're going to have all kinds of intermarriages, and the human race, as is supposed to happen, to move off planet and to go into the cosmos, we're going to have the best genes. It's no longer going to be divided by country, and we're no longer going to be divided by ethnicity. We're all going to be humans from Earth. That's it. And that's our future. And what's going to end up having to happen is the best genes are the genes that are going to be able to survive the cosmos. So we're going to have, assuming anyone can procreate, because our environment is so polluted with plastics and chemicals and all that crap that everyone seems to think like that's okay. There's no global warming. How about just keeping things clean? How about like no chemicals in the groundwater? How about no microplastics in the ocean? How about no particulate matter that we breathe in? It's so funny to me that we turn things into a political issue, but it's like you wouldn't leave your kitchen 10% dirty. You wouldn't leave a pile of festering dishes in your corner that were full of roaches and disgustingness just because, there's no global warming. But how about not spewing particulate matter into the atmosphere? It doesn't go anywhere except we're either going to breathe it in, it's going to go into the oceans, and we're going to drink it, or it's going to kill the fish that we need to eat too. But we don't think that way. It's like, no, it's a political issue. It's an economic issue. We're a burgeoning economy. We have to be able to burn coal. Otherwise, what are we going to do? Okay. But then in 100 years, give me a call. See where we're at. It's so crazy. But I do believe that that's what will eventually happen. And in the Expanse, they show us that. They show us a human population that has far more ethnic diversity because there's been so many intermarriages and people have mixed. We have mixed ethnicities, and that's what's going to happen eventually anyway. As soon as people can travel, it will happen because people will fall in love all over the world. It'll be one big, beautiful, romantic thing. And I totally agree. And the thing is, when DEI is done properly and everybody is represented, nobody wants to talk about that because that's considered a victory, and they want to pretend that those things don't ever happen. But I've been saying that The Expanse is one of the great in terms of the cast. It shows us exactly what a human future can look like, where there is no longer ethnic differences between us. The differences were between the Belters, Mars, and Earth. And, then it starts, I guess, being whichever planet you're from, it just changes things. But Scottish Dave, great letter. Here's another letter. Dean Mikitich from the UK writes, is DEI killing Hollywood? Hi, Rob. I wanted to share some thoughts I've been having about the current state of DEI in Hollywood. While I am fully supportive of the principles of inclusion and diversity, I can't help but feel that the way Hollywood is approaching it is somewhat misguided. It seems to be alienating general audiences and contributing to the decline in box office success, as we saw last year with the abundance of underperforming films, aptly dubbed the year of the flop buster. It appears that this trend may continue this year with only a few exceptions, such as Dune Part 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine. I don't know, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, there's some good stuff coming out this year. Personally, I find myself becoming less excited about upcoming films and increasingly drawn to classic movies from the past because of the push of DEI. I wonder what is driving this push for DEI and the way it's implemented within the studio system. It doesn't seem to be stemming from audience demand. Could it be a response to the cultural shifts happening in the U.S.? While Hollywood films have always reached English-speaking countries, It's important to recognize that each culture interprets content differently. For example, the UK has its own unique perspectives and tastes. Despite its openness, the UK has faced its own challenges with racism, although not on the same scale as the past. The way Hollywood is implementing DEI initiatives seems to be backfiring, potentially alienating and even offending entire countries, as seen with the Cleopatra controversy. How much more do the studios need to lose before they realize the importance of delivering good stories that resonate with a global audience? Are they willing to risk their business while audiences seek alternative forms of entertainment? Peace and long life, Dean Mikitich. Look, I agree with you, everything you said, Dean. You're right, but remember, there could be something else going on here. And again, you had companies like BlackRock and Vanguard that own a great deal of human civilization pushing these initiatives. Maybe they wanted a backlash. I don't know. But maybe, not driving this kind of division maybe is what certain economic forces are interested in having happen. I don't know. I think at the end of the day, I think we all believe in inclusion, at least equality of opportunity. And I'm a meritocratist. I believe that the best person... I watched a great video from somebody today that I don't know. I think he was a Scotsman. He came down hard on DEI. I subscribed to him. I'd never watched anything of his before. He did a really long thing about DEI and how, like so many other things, it's not really about inclusion. It's about the oppressed coming back so often, as is the case with far left politics throughout human history, especially the last 150 years. It's a lot about punishing it's about the oppressed coming back and punishing the oppressor. And I think DEI is kind of turned into that. I mean, I've never felt like I was attacked, but I'm now keenly aware I'm a white, cis, middle-aged male. So there have been jobs too. A few things that have happened that I've just been dismissed, which I find interesting, but it's certainly out there, and you're like, I wonder why. I mean, our civilization, it's almost like now you have a group of people, meaning people like myself, that are blamed for the ills of civilization, but it's the civilization that's the best civilization human history has ever had. I mean, it's so interesting when you think about where we came from. Go back 500 years. Go back 500 years. Go read about any place on Earth and try and find the place as an exercise. I've never thought about doing this, but I'll bet you if you go back 500 years, you would be hard-pressed to find any place that you'd want to live. Anywhere on the planet Earth. Anywhere. And think about where we're at now. Are we perfect? Hardly. Very imperfect, as a matter of fact. But there is more inclusion. There is more equality. There's less war, less pestilence than there's ever been in human history. Also more pollution of the planet, but that comes with the territory, and we've got to surmount that, just like we have to surmount AI art. But yeah, I don't know. And here's something else. Nate writes in, and he writes about authenticity and representation. Hello, Rob. I watched your show yesterday on Amazon and their requirements for representation, and it got me thinking about what you always say about authenticity. Representing a marginalized group is not really representing them without authenticity. You can put someone that is black or non-binary in a show like Star Trek, but if they're not being authentically represented as a black non-binary person, then all you're doing is checking boxes. It's unfair to the person being represented because it isn't really them. It's not really who they are. And so it just becomes a way for Amazon or Paramount or whoever the company is to say, look at us, we're being inclusive. It cheats the person who is being represented and cheapens who they are. If you really want to represent someone who is marginalized, then be authentic and tell their story. Be authentic to who they are as a person and to what they experience as a person. Just shoehorning them into your TV show or film is worse, in my opinion, than not putting them in at all. If I was a black non-binary person and I saw myself being represented in a show as simply a way to cover the company's DEI policies, I'd be pissed. I'd want them to represent me and who I really am. Plus, as a white cis male, I would actually like to see the lives of non-binary people or people of color authentically represented. One of the big reasons I watch movies is to know what it's like to live in someone else's shoes, to see the world from their perspective, and to gain a fuller understanding of what it means to be a human being. That's the beauty of something like film. It allows us a window into someone else's life and experiences. I'm all for inclusion in film and TV if it's done authentically. I love seeing stories from different perspectives, and it's what I love about cinema. But if you're not doing it in an authentic way, then it cheapens your story and hurts your product. It's one of the reasons I hate modern Star Trek. Actually, there's a lot of reasons, but this is a big one. By the way, that's not me saying it. That's right there. I feel that modern Star Trek just shoehorns in marginalized characters just to tick boxes, and it feels inauthentic and cheap. Amen. I think we deserve better from our TV programming. Thank you, Rob, for letting me talk a little bit about this topic. I believe representation is important, but it needs to be done in a way that is true and authentic to the lives of the people being represented. They deserve to have their stories told and told right. Amen. 100% right. Nate, 100% right. I totally agree with you. That's what you want. You want authentic, honest storytelling. Even the best fiction, you have to have truthful fiction. When I saw our non-binary character on Star Trek Discovery tell our gay character to use their proper pronouns in the 31st century, I wanted to put my face through the screen. In the 31st century, when human beings are now a spacefaring race for 1,000 years, and we've literally married aliens, do you think that somebody in the 31st century is going to have to remind somebody to use their pronouns? That was the dumbest shit ever. And again, that was the most pandering, horribly written, god-awful shit. And just like you said, Nate, that is not authentic. That's ticking boxes in the worst way. It also is totally unimaginative. I mean, I would be more interested in thinking, like, what is humanity going to look like once you start having sex with beings from other planets? What would that do to how do you then identify? And I'll tell you something. I've said, we were talking about romance earlier. What does a non-binary person's romance with another non-binary person look like? Like, I've never seen that story told, and I'm curious. Where's the romance? I've seen a lot of people talk about me, I'm non-binary. Look at me. Let me tell you what my identity is. Okay, I get it. You're non-binary. But what does that mean to the rest of your life? Like when you go through life, I see it believe me, I see it on TikTok, and I see pundits dealing with that and watching cringe TikTok videos or whatever and opining on them. But I want to know, what does it really mean? What is a life? How does romance work if a non-binary person is dating a binary person, somebody that identifies as whichever sex? What does being non-binary, how does that affect the rest of your life? Like when I get up in the morning, I don't think of my sex or sexuality as the first thing I think about. I don't, and that may be because it's my privilege and I've been this way for 50 plus years. I mean, it's like, it doesn't bother me. What I get up and think about is, what do I have to do? What do I want to be doing? What are my dreams? What do I want to accomplish today? Today, I had a big pitch meeting at a company with a project I've developed with a friend of mine for a long time. So we had a big pitch meeting. And it went well. And then I had to deal with designing Hollywood. And then I have a screenplay that I want to get to somebody to look at that I've written based on a book that I've adapted. And then I had a bunch of other stuff I had to do. And I did that. And then RM was doing shows on this channel, so I didn't want to interfere with her shows, and I got to get off because she's going to do another show. And now I'm going to do this, and I'm wondering, do I do Midnight Musings, or do I spend some time with Elizabeth? What do I do? But the one thing that doesn't factor into all that is I don't think about my identity, because I've never wondered about my identity. I've known who I am since I was a little kid. But what do people that are grappling with their identity, how do they live their lives? I don't know. I want to see somebody's got to do the great non-binary love story movie so we can all have a little inkling of what does that look like. I don't know what that looks like. And if I don't know what it looks like, I don't know how to handle the rest of the world. I mean, I want to know. Drew Skizzy says, would you want to see a Childhood's End movie? My favorite book ever. Have you watched the TV miniseries? I love that book. The miniseries was only okay. It didn't have the profundity of the book. And the book is short. I would love to see somebody do that movie well. But the miniseries wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. Check it out. And get back to me. Dan Candy says, AI is the new undiscovered country, and to quote Gorkon, our generation will have the hardest time living in it. Dan, amen. You're 100% right. I totally agree with you. Joe Panora says, did you see that report that 80% of Americans ingested chemicals that cause infertility, which was found in Cheerios? Reminded me of Children of Men. There is so much. I watched this documentary about Forever Chemicals. Look it up, Forever Chemicals. There was a documentary. It's the scariest shit ever. These companies were lying to us for so long. They didn't think it was a problem. Oh, we'll dump it outside. It doesn't matter. Oh, it's a problem. With fertility rates dropping, we're going to be at Children of Men. By the way, another great movie. We're heading that direction. Totally. A World in Pajamas says, unfortunately, I need to go to the land of Nod. Take care, Rob. Glad I got to see you live show. Hope you have a fantastic weekend. Well, Tracy, you are living in a world in pajamas, so enjoy your land of Nod. Yeah. Tom Jr. Jackson says, your thoughts on Alex Garland? Let me hold up. It's not Alex Garland. It's Alex Cox. Alex Garland made Ex Machina and has Civil War coming out. Your thoughts on Alex Cox writing and directing a sequel to his film Repo Man? Also, when will Whining About Movies return? We keep trying to bring it back. I'm trying. Elizabeth's been doing these paintings for her final show. So she's been busy and doesn't get home till 8 or 9 o'clock. So it's tough to schedule it, but hopefully shortly. You know what? I love Repo Man. Repo Man was a movie about the LA punk scene and aliens and things like that came out in 1984. I don't know about doing a Repo Man that's a continuation now. I would love to see a Repo Man sequel that's about Emilio Estevez today. What did the character of Otto in Repo Man grow up to be? You know, one of the most underappreciated, unsung, I think truly great, maybe not nearly as great as the first movie, but a really, really, really good sequel is T2, not Terminator 2, Trainspotting 2. Trainspotting just came out in 4K. Trainspotting 2 is, I think, a terrific sequel to Trainspotting. We catch up with those characters. I think it's really, really good, and people don't talk enough about it. So, what can I say? So there you go. And on that note, I'm going to jump off this show. I'm only jumping off because RM's going to come on at 7. So go find her. Go watch her. Support her. It'll be fun. Anyway, I want to thank you all for listening to this show. I don't know yet if we're going to do Midnight Musings tonight. I want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson for being a goof person and for being a great moderator. I want to thank everybody who jumped in on this stream tonight. Thank you very much. Good to see you. I don't normally go on at this time, but it was certainly a lot of fun. And yeah. So anyway, on that note, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. All you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to everyone, have a better night.